Federico, we are back with another edition of App Stories. I'm John Voorhees, of course, and you are Federico Viticci. What's going on with you?
Hello. Hi, I'm good. I got a bunch of games to play on Apple Arcade. That's what's new.
Yeah. We should talk about that. But first, I should let everyone know, too, that our sponsors for this episode are Backblaze, Privacy, and Pillow. You mentioned arcade, Federico, and I suppose it has a little something to do with the announcement that we heard at the end of last week about all the new games that came to Apple Arcade.
Yes. So initially, I was sort of skeptical about it because the press release that Apple sent a few days ago didn't really sell it.
No, it didn't.
And
really,
then when I opened Apple Arcade and I went into the All Games tab, they have a section showing you all games. It became clear to me immediately that it was a big deal. So Apple has done a bunch of things last Friday on Apple Arcade. So in addition to new Apple Arcade originals, this will be new games on Apple Arcade. And the two highlights, I guess, on Friday were Fantasian, which we talked about before. It's the new RPG by Hironobu Sakaguchi and the studio Mistwalker. Sakaguchi, of course, is the creator of the original Final Fantasy. And Fantasian we talked about before because of its unique graphics and sort of spin on the classic role-playing game genre. And the other is Wonderbox, which is an adventure game where you can create your own levels, you can share levels with other people. It's really cute and fascinating, and I want to check it out. So in addition to the originals, Apple also announced, and it's kind of a big deal, really, that they are effectively bringing back some back catalog games from the early days of the App Store and even later years. They're bringing them back and making them free to play with an Apple Arcade subscription. So there are two categories for these games, which is sort of what made the press release confusing and what makes the naming kind of confusing. Apple is calling them App Store Greats and Timeless Classics. So in both cases, these are older games that used to be, or for some games still are, available on the App Store as either paid upfront games or games with in-app purchases. In either case, they are now part of Apple Arcade, and they don't feature any in-app purchases, of course. That's the Apple Arcade deal. And they're not paid upfront, of course, because they're part of an Apple Arcade subscription. But they've also been updated for modern Apple devices and for iOS and iPadOS 14. And they only work on iOS and iPadOS. They are not available on tvOS or the Mac. Now, these games are divided into categories. My understanding is that it's basically just a matter of how old a game is. So, for example,
that's right.
You will find stuff like Fruit Ninja Classic. You will find, the original backgammon game.
Right.
You will find Monument Valley is part of this. All the popular games by Zach Gage, whom we interviewed on App Stories 3 years ago about, fun fact, game preservation. We talked about that. How about that? So Apple is bringing back a selection of older games, some from like a decade ago, some from 5, 6, and 2 years ago. I mean, games like, Really Bad Chess? Is that?
Yeah, Really Bad Chess is there. Flip Flop Solitaire, Spell Tower.
Good Sudoku is
those
part
are
of
all
it.
Zach's games. Cut the Rope is in there, and I think
Cut the Rope Classic, yes.
Yeah, except it's not in the classic category. It's in the other one, I think, because it's a version that had some updates to it.
Oh,
at some
it's
point.
a remaster version. Yes.
Exactly.
Version.
Right. So it's Forensic is in there. Right?
Forensic is coming soon. So Forensic from the Icon Factory is coming soon, but I assume that will be a timeless classic, right? Because that's an older game.
Yeah, that was a very early game.
So basically the deal is Apple is trying to expand Apple Arcade by adding back catalog titles from, basically fetching them in the vast history of the App Store. And I think it's a really clever move from a business perspective, and it's also fascinating from a game preservation perspective. So we are going to link in the show notes the series that we did on the 10th anniversary of the App Store in 2018. And we did a few App Stories interviews. I did a story about this very topic, about app and game preservation, how to preserve the App Store's history. And as far as games are concerned, I think it's really fascinating what Apple is doing here. And I think it's a really clever move because you're basically offering, it's free games, right? Because these are existing games that developers already made. And I assume Apple is reaching out to those developers and saying, hey, we want your game to be part of Apple Arcade. There's very little work you need to do, right? Perhaps drop, Facebook sharing or Facebook logins that you used to do years ago. I believe in Fruit Ninja now, for example, Facebook login is gone and you can sync your progress with iCloud and Game Center instead.
Right.
Update those games for modern devices and make them part of Apple Arcade. So I think it's a really clever move. When you think about it, it's really what we would have loved Nintendo to do with the Virtual Console, to say, look,
absolutely.
you can play a bunch of old games, $5 a month, and you can go in there and choose. Now, Nintendo is sort of doing this, but kind of backwards with the Nintendo Switch Online subscription.
Yeah.
I think Apple has a real shot here to at least try and achieve what Microsoft is doing when it comes to game preservation and backwards compatibility. I mean, obviously, Microsoft has a much, much bigger effort with the Xbox titles. But I think it's a clever move to use a subscription service, $5 a month, and Apple is sort of rolling out these classic games over time. I'm really fascinated by this idea.
It makes so much sense because this is Apple doing what they can't do with television, which is they don't have a back catalog of TV shows that they can rely on to kind of build that subscription service with TV Plus. But with games, they absolutely have that. We have there's an app store full of millions and millions of games, and gamers have already kind of voted with their dollars as to which of these are the very best games. And so it's very easy for Apple to kind of dip back into that catalog and pick out ones that should be part of Arcade. And it just makes, it creates so much more value for an Arcade subscription. That they're no longer is Apple solely going out and risking money on, fronting games that may or may not end up being any good. They're going out and acquiring these games for Arcade that have proven track records. So yeah, I think it makes a ton of sense. And there are a bunch of games in here I want to try. This episode of App Stories is brought to you by Backblaze, unlimited computer backups for Macs and PCs for just $6 a month. With Backblaze, you can back up your documents, music, photos, videos, drawings, projects, you name it, all of your important data. Do you live in the EU? You can even select for your data to be in the EU region when signing up for a trial. You can restore files from anywhere, directly download them on the web, or restore by mail by purchasing a hard drive from Backblaze, who will overnight it to you via FedEx. Once you restore your data, you can return the hard drive to Backblaze, and they'll give you a full refund. It's a great service. Are you worried about accidentally deleting files? For just $2 more per month, you can increase your retention history to a full year. Best of all, once backed up, the data is available wherever you are. You can access via the mobile app or the web. With more than 50 billion files recovered and downloaded, you'll never facepalm about forgetting that presentation on your home computer again. Go check out their free, fully featured, no credit card required trial right now at backblaze.com/MacStories. Be sure to use the URL backblaze.com/MacStories so they know you came from the show. Get peace of mind knowing your files are backed up securely in the cloud. Start a free 15-day trial with Backblaze today by going to backblaze.com/MacStories. Go play with it and start protecting yourself from potential bad times. Start today. Our thanks to Backblaze for their support of the show.
And what have you been up to, John?
All right. So it's funny because it really has to do with gaming too. I've been, last Saturday, I dipped back into retro gaming again. And I've been doing this on and off for a while because last year I ordered an Analog Pocket, which is actually physical hardware that is being developed by a company called Analog that plays old Nintendo cartridges. It has adapters for other systems too, but it plays Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, all those games. And it's a really interesting high-end piece of hardware that has now been delayed a full year into the fall of this year. which is very disappointing. So in the meantime, while I've been slowly acquiring a larger collection of these original cartridges online, I have been trying out AltStore and Delta and using an emulator to emulate some of these games, which look fantastic on the iPhone screen, and using a Backbone 1 controller. Now, this is all part of a broader thing I tend to do on Saturday mornings. Because I get up awfully early most days of the week, I really have a hard time sleeping in on Saturday. So a lot of times I just get up, and some Saturday mornings, it's always about research, which is a topic you and I have talked about at length in the past, especially with club members. And some Saturdays it might be I dive into a shortcut and I create something, which is what I did when I created a recent shortcut for read later PDFs for Club Mac Stories. Or maybe I just sit down and I catch up on a bunch of apps that I've been meaning to try and haven't yet. I do that kind of thing. But last Saturday, it was more of a personal project, which is testing out old video games and getting Delta all set up. So it's a lot of fun. And I find that setting aside that block of time ends up being really valuable. Sometimes it's just, it's just kind of relaxing in a way. It's not really designed necessarily to result in some sort of story, right, or not. More times than not, though, it does. And I feel like that kind of experimentation and research and letting your mind wander works really well when it comes to coming up with new ideas, for stories and other things.
Very well. All right, so we should talk about music.
We should. This is going to be a mini-series, isn't it?
Yes, because when we were putting together some of our notes about the topic of music and sort of what's our modern setup look like, what does it look like in terms of listening and discovering music, we realized that we were going to have a little too much to talk about and to cover in a single episode. So be on the lookout for part 2 on this topic next week. And this week, I think we're just going to focus on the hardware that we use and the services that we use. Right. We are going to save apps and websites and other things for, alternative streaming services for the following episode. So I think we should talk about the hardware that we have when it comes to listening to music first, and we should describe our setups and motivate some of our decisions. Now, John, I know that obviously you live in a house and you have a lot more space available than I do. I live in a small apartment. Right. And your setup is much more complex than mine because you have a studio where you can work and you've put some speakers in there, but you also have, 12 HomePod minis or something.
I do have a lot of HomePod minis.
And a bunch of original HomePods. So please explain this entire setup that you got going on.
All right. Well, I guess I will start with the studio because that's fairly simple. I've got the Harman Kardon SoundSticks 4 Bluetooth speakers connected to my Mac. And I got these kind of on a whim. They sound quite good, but they're those kind of transparent sticks plus a subwoofer that sits behind my screen on my desk because my desk is in a corner and it's kind of a triangular desk. And it fits in the corner. So I've got a lot of deep space behind the display where I can kind of tuck things. And one of the things tucked back there is the subwoofer. Now, I will caution people about the Harman Kardon SoundSticks because there have been a lot of issues with Bluetooth on the Mac recently. And the SoundSticks do tend to drop off. Like the connection drops pretty frequently when the Mac goes to sleep, which is not good. So I'm usually starting my day by reconnecting them so I can listen to music. And that is one reason that I also picked up 2 HomePod minis and paired them as a stereo pair that sit kind of behind me on a bookcase and a little mini fridge that's in the studio that sit behind me. Because then I can just stream music using AirPlay 2 from my iPad or iPhone or something. So it's kind of a combination of which one I want to really listen to. If I'm listening to something relatively quietly because there's other things going on upstairs or whatever it is, I usually will just use the SoundSticks because they're closest to me and at lower volumes I can hear them well enough. The other 2 are a little further away, and I switch to those once in a while. I just like having both.
So these are the fancy, transparent speakers?
Yeah, they are.
Okay.
They are. They're transparent and they connect wirelessly to the Mac Mini. and they sound great.
Nice.
So that's typically how I listen to music while I'm working. Now, in my living room, this house that we live in was built in 1940, so it's a fairly old house. And when we moved in, it was pretty small, and we expanded it though. We did an addition to the house. It's been now like 20 plus years ago. But the only thing that I really cared about was having a good TV setup and a good sound system. And so I researched that like crazy and installed speakers in the walls and in the ceiling. So it's 5.1 surround sound. Now, these were 20 years ago. This was very much in the day when that kind of thing with an audio video receiver connected to your TV and everything was, that was how you did it. You had to have a receiver and an amplifier, all that kind of stuff. Not so necessary today. And I actually, now I'm rethinking everything, and I had kind of settled on, well, you know what? I'm going to simplify my life, and I'm going to have an Apple TV, a TV sitting, on a TV stand, and 2 HomePods in a pair, and that was going to be it because it was good. The original HomePods actually, when they're paired with an Apple TV and when it works, sound terrific.
When it works.
Yeah, when it works. Our friend Mike Curley has had many, many troubles with this, and I have not had the same troubles he has, but I also don't use my HomePods all the time in that way because I don't have the 4K Apple TV, so I have to kind of reconnect them all the time, which is kind of a pain. So instead, I usually use the existing setup. But I was looking to the future, thinking, all right, Apple's going to hopefully update the Apple TV at some point. I'll get a 4K TV because we don't have one. And at that point, I will then kind of switch everything over. But then Apple went and they canceled the HomePods on me, kind of leaving me in the lurch. Now, I'm not totally left in the lurch because I do have a very nice sound system already installed in the house. But I kind of thought it would be nice to have them all as one. And the reason I would rather have a simpler setup is that you have to deal with having multiple remotes, or you have to do something like get one of those Logitech Harmony remotes, which is what we use. But Logitech isn't really supporting those like they used to. And things like a sound bar are a lot easier to deal with, I think, a lot of times. So ultimately, I think I may end up going that route is the HomePods are, unless Apple comes out with something that is similar to the HomePod that I like, I'll probably just get like a Sonos soundbar at some point and use that with an Apple TV and a new TV when I finally get around to getting one.
And so these HomePods that you have in the living room, how do you control them, and how do family members control them?
Usually with Siri.
Okay.
I mean, usually with Siri or AirPlay. Like I often will be like, if ask Siri to transfer music from my studio to the living room, for instance, or I'll just pull out my phone and start something playing if we're listening to music while we're having dinner or something. Because we have a very big open space that's kind of combined living room, kitchen, dining room table area. And so that we have music playing in the background a lot. And typically we do just AirPlay from an iPhone or an iPad, because even though we have this nice speaker system installed and a receiver for it and everything, it's just so much easier to pull out your phone and AirPlay to the HomePods that those speakers really only get used now for watching TV, because since they're integrated with the Harmony remote, all of that stuff is controlled as one unit. And when you turn on the TV, you have, access to controlling both the TV's inputs and the Apple TV and the volume on the receiver, all from the Harmony remote. So those are mainly TV speakers now, which is a little bit of a shame because they are very nice speakers, but it's just so much more convenient to use AirPlay. This episode of App Stories is brought to you by Privacy. Privacy is a tool that makes it easy to manage your financial life online while keeping your most important information secure. By generating virtual numbers, Privacy masks your bank information so you never have to worry about giving it out to people you don't know online. I tried this just the other day. I was buying something from a company online that I had never dealt with before, and I wasn't sure I wanted to give them my regular credit card number, so I went to privacy.com. I had signed up a couple of weeks ago, created a card. It just took a couple of seconds, And then I used that, putting a limit on the amount that could be charged to my card, which gave me the peace of mind of knowing that I wasn't going to be out of pocket more than I actually signed up for. Take back control of your payments. Decide who can charge your card, how much, and how often. And you can close cards at any time. Plus, you can make sure that you are never accidentally billed twice or upgraded to a service you didn't sign up for. And Privacy has partnered with the good folks at 1Password. You can create, use, and save privacy cards directly within the 1Password dashboard. All virtual cards created in 1Password will have the same security benefits as other privacy cards too. So it's a great way to make these cards. And you can set up spending limits, create single use, and merchant lock cards whenever you want. Head on over to privacy.com/appstories and sign up for an account. New customers will automatically get $5 to spend on their first purchase. Again, that URL is privacy.com/appstories to sign up today. Our thanks to Privacy for their support of the show. All right, Federico, I'll round this out with, I've got some HomePod minis here and there, one on my bedside table in my bedroom, which I use, but not an extraordinary amount. I mean, I like, when I go to bed, sometimes I'll listen to music for a while. And another one where we, in a little area in our front room where we've set up some exercise equipment during the pandemic because it just seemed like the thing to do since we weren't able to go out to a gym or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Then the other places where, I guess the other major place where we have music is outdoors. We actually have a couple of outdoor all-weather speakers pointing out to our patio, and they can be, the volume of those can be controlled with a knob inside the house. And because I have those connected to an Airport Express, I also AirPlay to those as well. And I've got a pretty good Wi-Fi signal outside, so that works pretty well for controlling music outside. So that's really it, other than, headphones, of course. I've got various AirPods and things that I can use.
All right. So it's pretty much an AirPlay and HomePod-centric setup, I would say.
Yeah, it really is, other than what we're doing with the TV and the built-in speakers with the receiver.
All right. So as I previously talked about, we now have a completely different setup here. So we got rid of all of our HomePods. I guess that was a good call. In months ago when we had no idea this thing was going to get discontinued.
Right.
All we have right now are two standard, like the latest version of the Amazon Echo. So we have a regular Amazon Echo in the kitchen and another Amazon Echo in the bedroom. We also have an old Echo Spot that is just on an IKEA cabinet in the small hallway that we got. It's mostly used as a digital clock. We don't really listen to music on that thing because it sounds terrible. So
Right.
Our main speakers to listen to music without using headphones or other AirPods and stuff like that are just the two Echoes that we have. Now, those Echoes are also an Echo group because in the Alexa app you can create a group and you can group different devices together. So we created like a single group called Everywhere that streams music to all of those devices at the same time. Now, Sylvia doesn't really use the Echo via Alexa. She accepts Alexa more than she did with Siri, obviously. But I am the primary sort of conductor of music around the house, meaning that
I'd say that I am too, probably.
Yeah. So I think I use the Spotify app more than controlling music via voice. So what I do is I take advantage of Spotify Connect, which is the technology that lets you stream Spotify to any connected speaker or device that has Spotify integration. So I usually just tap on the speaker icon in the Spotify app and I either pick an individual Echo or the Everywhere group. Because what's nice about this Echo and Spotify integration is that all the groups that you create in the Alexa app, they also show up in Spotify Connect. And what's also nice about Spotify Connect is that unlike AirPlay, it's all web-based, meaning that you can initiate a Spotify Connect session from one device, but then you can control the session on another device, meaning I can start playing music from my iPad Pro in the kitchen. And later, if I go to the bedroom and I only have my iPhone with me, when I open the Spotify app, it shows a dialogue that says, "You're now listening via Spotify Connect on this speaker from another device. Do you want to keep listening?" And you can click yes, and you can, it just seamlessly switches to the Spotify Connect session, and you can pause. You can build a queue, even if you started the stream from another device. This is different from AirPlay, where the stream is tied to the device that starts the streaming. I guess you can get around this limitation by selecting in Control Center the destination and then controlling it there. But it's so much easier to do so in Spotify Connect. It's a lot faster, and it doesn't require you to do the weird switch between devices thing in Control Center. It's a lot easier, and it works on any device. And I guess it's a different approach, right?
Yeah.
Because it's based on your Spotify account, and it talks to the internet. So it works differently, but I really like it.
I was going to say, I've been noticing some very strange AirPlay things during the 14.5 beta. And in my studio, where I use the two HomePod minis that are paired, it can take like 45 seconds sometimes to connect. And the music is playing. So the music, it depends what device I'm on. If I'm on a device that's connected to, and I think it may be related to the Mac, or maybe when I have my iPad plugged into a hub, it somehow the music is going through the hub at first, and it has a hard time switching over to the wireless connection. But yeah, there's definitely work that needs to be done there. I wanted to ask you, like, what do you do if you're out on your balcony, or maybe you're out on the beach or something like that? What do you do in that situation? Because I was going to say, the one thing I forgot to mention was I use a Libertone Zip, which is one of these, large speakers, portable speakers that's at least splash resistant and has a battery built into it. And a lot of times, if I don't feel like using those outdoor speakers that we have, or if I'm somewhere other than in my backyard, I can take that along with me, and it'll play. It has both AirPlay and Bluetooth, and it's a pretty nice speaker.
Yeah, so right now we don't have a solution for the balcony yet, because we rethought our entire setup during the winter season. So we didn't really consider what's it going to look like on the balcony. Also, we plan on moving at some point in the future, so I didn't really want to think about redoing the entire setup outside yet. But we'll see. I guess if we end up spending the summer here, then we're going to have to think about that. Right now, we have an old portable Bluetooth speaker that I don't remember the name, actually, but it's from like several years ago. But
didn't you used to have a Sonos or something that you used out in the balcony?
I used to have a Sonos. I guess I can take that out of storage and use it with Spotify outside. Maybe that's an idea. But we don't really use the portable Bluetooth speakers much, because when we are at the beach, I kind of want to be one of those people blasting loud music, and you're at the beach and it's like a public place and everybody starts looking at you. So if there's not a lot of people around, we would just use our phones to put on some music. Right. Otherwise, usually when I'm at the beach with friends, we just prefer to talk and play with the dogs and playing with the at the beach and do stuff, and especially with the dogs. Ginger loves to run around and fetch a stick and stuff like that. So we're really not music at the beach people. But I wanna think about this, because I know that Sonos has the new portable speaker coming out. The Move. What was it called? We talked about this.
Oh yeah,
a few weeks ago.
Something like that. I think that's right. Yeah. I think you definitely should do something on your balcony. At least if it's something like that, even if you move, it's probably something that will work in a new place. So. I just like having music outside myself, not necessarily at the beach, but if you're in a relatively private area on a balcony and in your apartment that isn't too loud, that won't disturb your neighbors, it'd be good.
Yeah. So for headphones, right now I'm primarily using, for Spotify, I'm primarily using either the AirPods Max, which have become my go-to headphones for in the afternoon when I'm working and I want to listen to music with noise cancellation, because I don't want to hear any other noise when I'm writing. those are like my go-to daily headphones for Spotify. I love them. They sound amazing. They're comfortable. They fixed the battery issues with the latest firmware update. And I love the physical controls with the little knob and the button. So I really like them. And I am not using AirPods Pro anymore. For the past few months, I have been using the Sony wireless earbuds. These are unfortunately, they have a pretty terrible name.
Like all Sony.
Sony headphones. These are the WF-1000XM3.
Okay.
So these are the third version of Sony's wireless earbuds. They are AirPods Pro. Basically, they are the AirPods Pro competitor by Sony. They have a charging case. They have a different shape, and they support noise cancellation. And they don't support wireless charging, unfortunately. And they have their own dedicated app on your iPhone that you can use to change a few settings and update the firmware. Now, I really like these wireless earbuds because they sound a lot better, at least to me, than the AirPods Pro. I'm using some compatible foam tips that I got from Amazon with these earbuds. Now, there's a couple of things that I should mention. I believe that the XM4, so a new version of these wireless earbuds from Sony, they're coming out soon. I believe as of a few days ago, somebody spotted an FCC filing for the charging case for the new version of the WF wireless earbuds.
Oh yeah, I'm seeing a bunch of stories about this on What Hi-Fi and other places.
Yeah, so there's a new version of these earbuds coming out soon. And ideally, that version will support wireless charging. Right now, what's nice about the case is that it supports USB-C charging, so that's convenient, but it's not wireless. So I would love to have Qi charging like with AirPods Pro.
Right.
Now, I really dislike the gestures on these wireless earbuds because I have grown used to the holding and pressing with the AirPods Pro. You can wrap your fingers around, squeeze on the stems. Like that's really intuitive and convenient. And on the Sony earbuds, you gotta tap on the earbud, and I found the tap gesture to sometimes it doesn't get recognized, and I just don't like it anymore because I'm used to the squeezing now. And also it's confusing because you need to configure separate gestures for each earbud, and so if you're only wearing one, you got to remember what it's doing. I don't like it, and I wish that it was more similar to the AirPods Pro gesture system. For that reason, when I'm doing stuff around the house, like when I'm cleaning or doing some other things that I need to take care of, like washing the dishes, for example, and I want to listen to a podcast, I just wear a single AirPod Pro. So I still use them occasionally, but only because the gesture is more convenient in situations where I find myself playing and pausing frequently.
So that's interesting. I find that they're very good for that sort of thing because, I actually, I think I confessed somewhere that I sent my AirPods Pro through the laundry and ruined them. And I waited until, yes, I did that with the original AirPods, and then I did it with the Pros because, why not? And I waited until they were on sale, and I finally got myself a new set. And I like them for things like going for a walk outside. I don't like them for exercising. I find that they're not really built for that, especially if you're out running or something. They do tend to jiggle their way out of my ears a little bit, and they don't handle the sweat quite as well as I would like them to. For that such situation, I have Powerbeats Pro, which they hook over your ears. They're a lot more rubberized and water resistant, and I found that they just work really well for that situation. So, I guess I've got too many sets of headphones. Well, I guess I shouldn't be saying I have too many sets of headphones. You should be saying you have too many sets of headphones. But I do have a weakness for headphones, and I do like the AirPods Max a lot. I don't use them as much as I would like, and I think that's partly because with the pandemic, I've had my family around so much that I feel like I'm isolating myself from people sometimes with those. So I do wear them, for instance, if it's later in the day and I'm upstairs, I don't feel like sitting at my desk anymore, and maybe I'm just editing a story or something. I will sit on the couch and do that and use the AirPods Max while Jennifer's watching TV, for instance, because I can't edit and listen to the TV in the background at the same time. So sometimes I'll do that kind of thing. But yeah, I like them a lot. I just don't use them as much as I thought I would. This episode of App Stories is brought to you by Pillow. Getting a good night's sleep is underrated, but with a little help, it can be life-changing. Pillow is an all-in-one sleep tracking solution to help you be more aware of your sleep patterns and discover what might be affecting your sleep quality. It's easy to fall into bad sleep habits, but with Pillow, you can get back on track. If you have an Apple Watch, tracking your sleep is as easy as wearing it to bed. Pillow will track and analyze your sleep automatically. One of Pillow's most loved features is the ability to create detailed heart rate diagrams from every sleep session. You can even compare your sleep quality to things like your weight, steps, caffeine consumption, and many more health metrics to discover what might be affecting your sleep. Pillow can optionally record sounds during the night too. From sleep talking to sleep apnea and snoring or unexpected noises during the night that might be affecting your sleep, a lot of users are surprised by the results. Pillow is also very privacy-minded. All your sleep and audio data are encrypted and stored on your device and in your iCloud account using end-to-end encryption. Pillow doesn't have user accounts, so you can use it anonymously, and it doesn't send your data anywhere else. Naps can boost your focus, creativity, and overall well-being. If you're working from home, you can also take naps using Pillow's Power Nap mode. If you need an alarm, Pillow can help wake you up using your iPhone, Apple Watch, or iPad. If you have watchOS 6 or later installed on your Apple Watch, the latest update of Pillow uses the new extended runtime to minimize battery consumption on the Apple Watch. Pillow has a home screen widget too, which can track your latest sleep analysis and daily sleep goals too. Pillow is available on the App Store for the iPhone, Apple Watch, and iPad. Discover all of Pillow's features at pillow.app. Again, that URL is pillow.app. I'll put a link in the show notes too. Pillow, sleeping better made simple. Our thanks to Pillow for their support of App Stories.
I should also mention my sort of offline music listening setup.
Yes.
Now, I covered this a bunch of times before. So in addition to Spotify, which is like my go-to streaming service, like when I just want to search for something or a playlist, like that's my regular system for listening to music. But I also have my own offline personal music library for music that I purchase and that I listen to using my high-resolution player, which is a Sony Walkman. And I call them my good Sony headphones. So I own both the over-ear wired MDR Z1R headphones as well as the IER Z1R in-ear monitor earbuds. Now these are some they're not cheap. This is expensive equipment, but it's something that it's something a little treat for myself. That I purchased this a couple of years ago when I realized that I was missing the idea of having my own music library for a selection of my all-time favorite albums. And the way that I listen to this is very intentionally, I would say. Like Spotify, like with Apple Music before, is something that I just put on for background music, right? I don't necessarily like I listen to music, but I don't pay attention to it. Whereas with the Walkman and the Sony headphones, what I do is when I just want to listen to an album, and I know that it may sound weird as an activity because people don't do it anymore. Like, what? You just sit down and listen to music and do nothing else? And that is exactly what I do. Like, a couple of years ago, I rediscovered the joy of doing nothing but listen to music. And the Sony Walkman is entirely offline. It doesn't have Wi-Fi. It doesn't have an internet browser. It doesn't have apps. It just has music. And what I do, now I don't do this every day, but every once in a while I just sit down and I spend like a couple of hours just taking in the music. And obviously with these headphones, you can hear the finest detail of any performance. And it's just something that until a few years ago, I never thought I would do again. And it's a nice break from, the kind of usual music listening that I do. So over the past couple of years that I've been doing this, and I want to shout out to my friend Mohammed Taher of Brave Wave Records that got me into this whole, having a Walkman and an offline music library deal. I mean, of all people, even Hideo Kojima has a Walkman and does this thing with a personal music library. So listen to Hideo Kojima if you don't want to listen to me. But so I've gone back to rebuilding my music library, and I've purchased some of my all-time favorites. I've also been ripping CDs again for the past couple of years. If you want to know how I do this, I'm going to drop a few links here and in the show notes. But basically, I use an application on the Mac called XLD. It's a free and open source CD ripping utility. I have an Apple SuperDrive that I use for this stuff. XLD does a really good job at ripping CDs and also fetching metadata from the internet. For those times when I need to fix metadata, I use another Mac app called Meta.
It's a very good app. Yeah.
It's a really good app, and I also wrote about this last year, I think. It's a really good Mac app. And for purchasing music, now, for those times when I need to buy a CD, because a FLAC or high-resolution version is not available for digital purchase online, I still use Amazon. I still buy CDs from Amazon. Or if one of the artists that I love is putting out a new album and they are doing a physical release, I just purchase the album from the artist's website. Like I did with Taylor Swift for Evermore, like I did for The Main a couple of years ago, like I'm going to do again for The Main for the new album that they have coming out this summer. Otherwise, I just buy digital music from, I think it's 3 websites, primarily from HD Tracks, which I got to use via a VPN. I use ExpressVPN, which I know has been a sponsor before, but I really use ExpressVPN. But yeah, because HD Tracks is only available in the United States.
Oh, interesting.
But if you have a VPN, even if you use an Italian PayPal account, it doesn't matter as long as they see an IP address from.
Right.
I use Chicago, John. I want to pretend that I'm
I
you.
appreciate that.
When I want to browse the internet anonymously, I like to pretend I'm
you
John
pretend
Borges.
you're me.
Yes.
So when the authorities knock on my door and say, "What are you doing?"
It's like, man, why have you been purchasing all this music? What's wrong with you? So yes, I use HD Tracks. I use 7 Digital, which is another website to purchase FLAC music. 7 Digital, thankfully, is available in Italy. Otherwise, I can also use Bandcamp. So a lot of bands, they have Bandcamp profile pages where you can buy music directly from them, and you can pick your own pricing, which is a nice thing to do. Sometimes you want to give a little more money to your favorite artist, because yes, you should support your favorite artist. This is also part of the reason why I do this. I like to purchase and own my music for albums that I really care about. So again, most days I just put on the AirPods Max and I just listen to music in the background like any other normal person does. Every once in a while, I just like to sit down, dim the lights, and my dogs are sleeping next to me usually, and I just listen to an album like that without doing nothing else.
No, I get it. I definitely have had times in my life where I've been like that. I'm not really like that now. And I think you and we have like some overlap in our taste in music, but I think we both enjoy music in very different ways. And that I think to me really came out when you started using Spotify, because I think there are aspects of what you like about Spotify that are very attuned to the way that you listen to music. Whereas like for me, on Apple Music, the iOS 14 feature that allows you to, when a playlist ends and then it just continues playing music of a similar type endlessly, I love that, because a lot of times I just don't want to think about it. I want to have it served to me and not necessarily pick it out myself. And I think that's, you're obviously being much more intentional about it, especially with your offline music. But I think even with your Spotify music and the way you listen to it, I think there are aspects of the way those playlists work that are a little different than Apple Music, and that you seem to like, because you never really got into the Apple Music algorithmic playlist, did you?
No.
Or even the curated ones for that matter, right?
No, not really.
I use a lot of those. I listen to a bunch of different playlists regularly that are updated, and that's one way I discover music. Plus, I usually listen to all of my all of my algorithmic ones at least once a week. So that's definitely one of the cores of the way I listen to music every week. And you've got the Spotify ones, which are just designed a little differently, I think.
Yeah, the Spotify ones are really, I would say the main reason why I love using Spotify. So since I switched last December, I've really grown to appreciate again, which is, I knew that these features of Spotify were great before, but using Apple Music, I sort of, it's not that I forgot about them, but it's like I wasn't thinking about them anymore. But now that I'm back, I can say that honestly, the especially Discover Weekly and Release Radar, they are an amazing tool to discover both old music you didn't know about, as well as new releases from your favorite artists. But also, and that's the thing with Spotify, they like to mix in all of their algorithmic playlists. They like to offer a good mix of songs from artists you may already be familiar with, as well as new artists that might suit your taste. And so the idea is that when I use those playlists in Spotify, I always find myself thinking, oh, this is a nice song from, I don't know, say Stereophonics, or not Oasis. There's not a single Oasis song that I don't already know. But like
right.
from a band that I'm familiar with, but like I didn't necessarily know, or maybe I haven't listened to that song in a while. Like that's the idea. Or it's a completely new band that has either a new song out today, or in my case, for example, there's this song that came out in December, so 4 months ago, and I didn't know about that artist. I didn't know about the song, but it was served in my Discover Weekly this week, and I've been obsessed with that song. So Spotify is excellent at doing this kind of sort of serendipitous discovery, and I guess they have their machine learning stuff. It really works because they build a profile on you, and they're smart enough to even understand what are English speaking songs and what are Italian songs. And so they are presented and grouped differently in these playlists. It's really well done. And in addition to these, obviously I should also mention I covered these on Mac Stories last week. Now Spotify has rolled out a bunch of other algorithmic playlists with the Spotify mixes that I wrote about on the site. And the Spotify mixes are going to be based on artists, genres, and decades. So the decade, and especially I think the decade one, is going to be particularly interesting because it's a super easy way for me to say, I want to listen to a bunch of music from the 90s or from the mid 2000s, for example. And that is it's exactly the kind of thing that I usually do. But when I'm in the mood for say 80s songs, I usually just search for a pre-made playlist. And instead, right now, Spotify will generate these kinds of decade-based playlists for me, based on songs from that era that I will likely appreciate. Right. And so I think that's a really interesting approach. And then obviously, I covered this before, but what I also like about Spotify is the fact that you can now filter your liked songs by mood or by genre. So you can say, go into my collection of all the songs that I ever liked in Spotify, but just shuffle things for a chill mood. Or for an acoustic mood. And that really works because this is part of the Spotify backend. They have this entire system for organizing songs based on genre and overall mood. And also search in Spotify is super fast. And I find myself appreciating, I know this is very controversial, especially with App Stories listeners, but I find myself appreciating the mix and match of podcast and music in the same app. So I've become one of those people.
You have. I don't think that I could do that, the podcasts and the music mixed together, only because to me, those are two different modes of listening to things and very different. So I just appreciate having them in different places. But I am jealous of the playlist that you're describing from Spotify because Apple, I don't think, has really figured that out super well yet. I mean, you obviously have any playlists that you've created yourself available. And then you've got a bunch of curated playlists. Plus, you have some algorithmic playlists. But for the most part, most of those are based on new things that are being served to you. I'm thinking about the New Music Friday playlist or the chill mix oftentimes is stuff that is all new to me. I would like to have kind of more mixes that were based on a combination of things that are known to be things I like, as well as new things, or just exploring catalogs more deeply, like you said, where it may be a band that you're familiar with, but a song you haven't listened to in a long time or ever even heard, for that matter.
Yeah, exactly. And it's really, I think it's a really clever approach, and it, when it comes to discovery, because it's not just about keeping on top with the latest releases, which is also something that Release Radar is really good at, but there's a lot of back catalog. There's millions and millions of songs that you likely haven't listened to before, that obviously it's impossible to listen to the entire catalog of music that was ever produced in human history. But that's where the machine learning and the personalization comes in.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think the other thing that Apple is still a little weak at is that I do notice that if I have a week where, I don't know, maybe for some reason there are a couple of days where I listen to a whole lot of pop music or something, my Friday new music mix will be almost exclusively pop music. And it's like, I want some pop music in there. I'm not saying that I don't, but I also don't want it to all be that. And and when we recorded this last Friday, I had a very good Friday mix. And I think that was because for a lot of this week, I wasn't listening to anything other than a shuffle of my favorited songs on Apple Music. And those are all songs that I know and like and listen to over and over again. And so it did feed me a good mix based on that. But some weeks I don't listen to that. Maybe I listen to a couple more rap songs than usual, or maybe it's a soundtrack from a movie, and I don't listen to those very often. And I don't want then on Friday to have a ton of show tunes and soundtrack albums in my mix. That happens too often still.
Yeah. And what I should also mention about Spotify is that their system takes into account any Spotify session. So whether you play from the Echo or from a PlayStation console or from your iPhone, from your iPad, as long as you're logged into your Spotify account, it's going to feed the machine learning engine behind the scenes. And I believe that's not always the case with Apple Music, which tends to be a lot more device-based when it comes to figuring out, and that's why Spotify Wrapped, is a thing, because they take into account all of your data points, which I understand if people are not comfortable with it. I totally understand, but the upside is you also have all these other features. So ultimately it's a trade-off, and it comes down to the kind of company that you like more and the kind of service that you think fits better with your lifestyle and with your music preferences.
Right. No, it's true that Apple Music it's a bit of a black box, but it does seem to be more device-centric in terms of things that show up as having been played and that sort of thing. Well, Federico, I think that's a great place to stop. Next week, we are going to talk all about third-party apps, and we have a very, very long list of them. Some of these we've talked about before, but a lot of them we haven't, and some of them have gotten recent updates, so there's a lot to talk about there as well. I want to thank our three sponsors again for this episode. That is Backblaze, Privacy, and Pillow. You can find me and Federico over at macstories.net. Federico is at Fetici on Twitter and Instagram. That's VITICCI. And I'm at John Voorhees. JOHNVOORHWES. Talk to you next week, Federico.
Ciao, John.